If I went outside today and I found a dog sleeping in the bush, I could call a local number and someone would come get that dog. There would be posts online to try and find that dog's family. If the family could not be found, it would be provided shelter and food until such time it could find a new family, a new community, people to care for it and make sure it's safe. If I were to call because a man was sleeping in a bush, I would most likely be told to leave him be as they are aware he is there and he is fine. Or worse yet, someone with a gun and the ability to charge fines will be sent out to make him leave the little refuge he may have. Mahatma Gandhi, Cesar Chavez, Hubert Humphrey, and many others have all famously argued some phrasing of the quote, "True measure of a society can be found in how it treats its most vulnerable members." In this regard, I find the existence of homelessness in our society to be a failure on our society and not the individuals themselves suffering from being unhoused. On January 11th of 2018, CTV News Kitchener released an article titled, "Residents in Stratford Pushing for a Homeless Shelter." This is the body of that article. The City of Stratford is working towards a long-term solution to homelessness, but a permanent emergency shelter isn't part of it. Stratford currently does not have a homeless shelter for men or women over the age of 24 who are not victims of abuse. Rob Horn, the City of Stratford's Chief Administrative Officer, says anyone in need of a place to stay is put up in a motel. Our focus is on making sure that no one remains out in the cold on a nightly basis. We're able to do that, but at the same time, our focus on finding permanent solutions, he says. Additionally, the city is in the process of building new affordable housing. A set of quadruplexes is expected to be ready by the spring. This can't come soon enough for local resident Nicole McCormick, who says she nearly ended up in the city's homeless system herself. "It's not even worth going there. It's a drug den," she says. Barry Wick has started an online position that aims to build a shelter for chronic homelessness in Stratford. "I want to be the voice for people who don't have it, and I want to be able to help those who need the extra help to get back on their feet again," he says. City officials say there are fewer than 10 people a night that are living on the streets in Stratford and don't have a place to stay. As noted, this article was 7 years ago. When arguing against the need for a shelter, the number of unhoused individuals on any given night was less than 10. The last number I've seen is over 50, with close to 300 falling in the hidden homeless category. We are no longer in the position to not have a shelter. While I agree with Housing First initiatives as the most effective and successful solution to solve homelessness and provide reintegration for the unhoused, we have failed to provide sufficient capacity to stem the flow of economic and health decline of our populace, leading to over a 500% increase in the number of unhoused individuals in just 7 years. I agree that we need to build more geared to income and affordable units to address the real issue of homelessness and provide critical opportunities to the unhoused to living meaningful and dignified lives. However, we are not building enough geared to income and affordable units. The Attainable Housing Project through the City and Invest Stratford is over a year in, and we still do not have a definition of attainable from the province. In fact, the listed definitions of attainable and affordable through the Attainable Housing Project within Invest Stratford are currently listed with the wrong definitions. I understand the province was looking at changing these definitions in order to say they're providing affordable housing without actually doing it, but they've abandoned that in pursuit of simply continuing to not even pretend to value the poor and marginalized. There used to be an argument that what we really needed to address homelessness was mental health and addiction supports. Well, we aren't getting mental health supports, and all consumption treatment services in Ontario have closed as the province has decided we are an abstinence-only province. To their credit, the spike in overdose deaths is reducing the unhoused population, but I find that approach to be absolutely shameful and immoral. However, today we have unhoused individuals who are unhoused simply for economic reasons. Over 50% of Canadians now live paycheck to paycheck. We lost 26,000 jobs in just Ontario last month. Over 800,000 Ontario citizens are now unemployed. Youth unemployment is now at 15%. Of the 60,000 federal jobs Mark Carney plans to cut, some 30,000 of them will be from Ontario. We haven't even started to really see the devastation to the job market that the trade war and artificial intelligence will bring. Even for those who have employment, stagnant wages and devaluing of the dollar from inflation has left many full-time employees still living in their cars or on our streets, on our benches. I know multiple individuals who have held down full-time jobs while going to sleep on the benches by the water before their next shift. These are the people who cook your food, stock your shelves, services you rely on a regular basis, yet they're incapable of even earning the basic necessities of life. I implore every single person in this room to stop and think for a minute. If you lost your access to income tomorrow, how long until you would be at risk of homelessness? I myself rent, along with over 30% of our population, so my risk is fairly high. Due to the unforeseen circumstance of being born too late, I am unable to compete in the current housing market. So for me, it's about 6 weeks. 6 weeks or 3 paychecks before I'm in a position that puts my safety in danger. Recent Freedom of Information requests put arrears for property taxes at dangerously high levels, and with continued cuts in inflation leading to increasing property taxes, I do not see that situation improving anytime soon either. Unemployment is at 8% for Ontario, and over 10% of Ontario's workforce earns minimum wage. That means that nearly 20% of Ontario's working population who have actively or recently working are at risk of housing insecurity. As I said at the beginning, homelessness is not a personal fault. It is a societal failure, and we are failing. Where is this leading? MAID stands for Medical Assistance in Dying. Track 2 offers medical assistance in dying for individuals whose natural death is not reasonably foreseeable, but who still meet other eligible criteria for MAID due to grievances and irredeemable conditions. In case you don't know what I'm getting at here, we are now offering death to those suffering from disabilities who otherwise cannot care for themselves. A true story, a disabled individual who was living with his family was being cared for full-time by his mother. At the time of his mother's passing, he was unable to care for himself, and with the long wait times and shortage of supportive housing and disability benefits being too low to even cover the basic cost of living by large amounts, one path forward he was offered was death. We don't have the capacity to offer you the services you require to live a dignified life, but we can offer you assistance in death. Track 3 of MAID is set to be implemented in March of 2027. Track 3 of MAID offers medical assistance in dying to individuals who struggle with mental health. According to the DSM-5, addiction is a mental illness. That means that one of the plans that will be brought forward to address a lack of housing and support is assisted death. Let me be clear. I support an individual's right to a dignified death on their terms. I do not support assisted death as a means of replacing a shortage of services. MAID is now the 5th leading cause of death in Canada. After the implementation of Track 2, MAID, the United Nations is now investigating Canada's use of the program. Now that we have discussed how becoming unhoused can happen to basically anyone, even some lawyers and previously elected ministers of provincial parliament have become homeless. And now that I hope I've made it clear that the provincial and federal governments are not coming to save us, we can discuss what we can do. I know there are some service providers in this area who do not wish to have change. Some have a habit of gatekeeping in this space, and I'm sure some councillors will be getting phone calls stating as much, but we are failing. What we are doing is not working, and we need to increase capacity quickly as an emergency measure until such time that the capacity of the unrestricted full-time and supportive housing can be increased. The argument, we have a plan, to make a plan, to build something that will have 10 to 20% affordable, with shovels in the ground in 2 years, built in 6 years, is no longer an acceptable answer. We need a solution now. It is already too late. We have already ignored our responsibilities and excused people sleeping on the streets for too long. That being said, I believe that the Rotary is the best or even a generally good location for an emergency shelter? No. I don't think this is a good location. Not because of some not in my backyard arguments. NIMBYs will occur when talking about housing the poor anywhere. I could throw a dart at the map of Stratford, and wherever it lands, someone will have a problem with that being where we help the unhoused. No, I do not like using the Rotary because it is nowhere near the services these individuals rely on, and it requires near complete removal of the population on a daily basis, with no grocery stores or other assistance whatsoever in the area. When looking at aiding marginalized communities, the first thought in reference to location should always be what is the best for the ones who require aid. That being said, if this is the only location that can be used, then it is the location we must use. There is no longer an option to not provide overnight shelter. And I don't just mean when outdoors will literally kill you, I mean year-round. It is unacceptable to have people sleeping and dying on the streets in one of the most resource-rich nations on the planet. For this reason, I would request that if possible, the motion be changed. Instead of that the mayor be asked to include a temporary shelter in the Rotary complex for homeless people in the winter as part of the 2026 budget, I would suggest it reads, that the mayor be asked to create a mayor's task force formed to research a location for permanent emergency shelter for those experiencing homelessness within Perth, or that council or the mayor direct staff to find a suitable location for a permanent emergency shelter for those experiencing homelessness within Perth, and that funds be allocated in the 2026 budget for the express purpose of operating said shelter. Unless council and the corporation that is the municipality of Stratford believes that the Rotary is the only possible location that could be used to provide emergency shelter for this winter. If that's the case, then I request you pass the motion as is, and we look to other locations for use beyond this coming winter. Maybe the inconvenience of the Rotary being the location will push for this to be addressed faster. After all, the option of continuing to not provide emergency shelter outside a few weeks a year at a motel is immoral, dangerous, and unbecoming for any community that believes it values life. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Councillor Giza, for bringing forth this motion. I hope that me taking the time to come and speak with you today made a difference. I do not wish to be reading another article in 2032 about how we didn't need a shelter now when we still need a shelter in 2032. I hope that if I'm reading in 2032 about this conversation we had today, and I know that we don't need a shelter then, it's because we've actually addressed this issue properly. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions?